All right. So welcome everyone to the Stormwater Infrastructure Matters Coalition public meeting. As Chino and Michelle, thank you for running through the schedule. I'm Leonel Lima Ponce. I'm the chair of the steering committee. Michelle is under the weather today, so we'll be running the meeting as a group. Thank you all for attending. And today we're gonna start with Emily Walker, and then we're gonna go on to Amy Moxney. So Emily, I will just leave it up to you to share your presentation, and then we can have Amy follow up after you. Thank you very much.
Great. Thank you so much. Great to see you all and meet those of you I haven't met, but I see a lot of familiar faces and names. So great to be here. My name is Emily Walker. I'm the Senior Manager of External Affairs at the Natural Areas Conservancy, and I am here to share a recent stormwater modeling report that we did that's centered on natural areas in New York City and actually a few other cities in the US and their stormwater potential. But let me pull up the slides. Give me just one second. All right, hopefully everyone can see this deck. This is my favorite vernal pool in Upper Highland Park, doing what it does best, which is capturing stormwater. I'm going to start by just giving some disclosure. My colleague, Jeffrey Clark, who is our Senior Manager of Applied Research, is the primary author of this report. It is a technical report, so I will do my best to represent the very informed work that he did. But forgive me if there are some technical aspects that I'm not able to answer. I will share Jeff's email address with everyone here, so if there are any technical follow-up questions that folks have, he would be happy to answer them. And he's sorry he couldn't join today to lead this presentation. But with that, I'll start by giving just a high-level quick overview of the Natural Areas Conservancy. Many of you are likely familiar with us as an organization, but for those of you who aren't as familiar, we're a citywide nonprofit, and we are focused on the care and condition of the 20,000 acres of natural areas that are within the city of New York. We do that by partnering closely with our friends at New York City Parks, but we also work closely with other land managers in the city of New York that have a significant proportion of what we define as natural areas, so our forests, wetlands, and grasslands. And we also do a significant amount of research on the condition and kind of potential of these spaces in terms of some of the ecological benefits and services that they provide to the city. We also convene a citywide, a national network called the Forests and Cities Network, which actually, as of I think last week, now includes 26 cities across the US to bring together a group of best practice and practitioners who are doing work in natural areas management, particularly with urban forested natural areas in cities. So I mentioned a little bit of who we are, but a lot of the work that we do is executed, like I said, through research. We also do a lot of partnership-based work with peers, not only at the city itself, but also with fellow parks conservancies, for instance, that hold a significant proportion of forests or wetlands within their park properties. And we also do a fair amount of advocacy, which is my primary role at the organization. I should add really quickly, I'm joined by my colleague Shannon Jordy today, who's also present in the meeting. So she's our Deputy Director of Communications and External Affairs. And I'm glad she could be here to support me in this, and she may pop some resources in the chat as I go. But ultimately, our mission is to really increase the health and resilience of our natural areas in the city of New York, but also kind of on a national scale. We really think that these are an important component of a healthy and thriving urban open space network. And our goal is to really ensure that the people of New York City have the ability to safely access these spaces and to also understand the importance of them for both ecological benefits and public health. We like to give some context. I think it's often surprising for folks to get a sense of just how green New York City actually is and how natural areas fit into that equation. So we love to share this kind of overview of the city of New York. 40.5% of the city is considered green. 12% of that is natural areas. So again, those are our forests, wetlands, grasslands. We have 300 miles of nature trails in the New York City park system. And as I'm sure many of you are very aware on this call, we have 520 miles of coastline in the city of New York. So at the heart of today's presentation, we've done a number of research projects over the years to try and understand the benefits of healthy natural areas and how they kind of play into a more resilient city. And one of the things that we sought to do with this report was to really get an understanding using some modeling that I'll get into in a few minutes, what the kind of potential for stormwater capture and management are within our natural forested areas. I think this is a crowd that likely understands this very intimately, but we know that having green infrastructure and green spaces can help reduce flooding. And we know that natural areas and forests help to absorb that rainfall and really take some of the pressure off of some of our other infrastructure that sees a high amount of pressure during extreme rain events, such as our city sewer system. We also know that healthy natural areas and wetlands play a really critical role in improving water quality. And we know that communities are more resilient when they have these protections in place. So we're really interested in trying to understand how parks and natural areas and forests kind of fit into this context. Um, I'm going to breeze through some of these because I'm guessing a lot of this is very well understood by all of you on this call, but we know that with climate change and the kind of increases in intense storms that we've been experiencing in recent years, this is a really urgent question for the city of New York. We know that climate change means that the ambient temperature is higher, and that means that we have more moisture in the air, and that's allowing the atmosphere to carry more water. We also know that there have been a lot of shifting weather patterns in recent years that are kind of altering the pathways of storms, and we're seeing those impacts kind of play out more in real time, which is an unfortunate reality, but one that we need to contend with. We also know that New York City is experiencing more intense rainfall more frequently. We're having heavier downpours and more rainfall throughout the year. Today feels like a little bit of an aberration in that it feels, at least in my neighborhood in Cypress Hills, like a gentle rainfall, but we've had a lot of really dramatic kind of cloudburst events. Even this summer, it feels like every other day you go on social media and see these kind of catastrophic videos of flooding in the city of New York. So we know that this is an issue that's only increasing in urgency. And it's kind of moving beyond the scope of storm events like Hurricane Sandy that were incredibly impactful, but this is kind of becoming the lived reality for New Yorkers. In terms of the city itself, we know that increased stormwater is increasing pressure on cities like New York, and we see this day in and day out. When we have these intense rainfall events, we have an aging sewer system, and we know that an aging sewer system is not capable of really intercepting the amount of stormwater that we're now receiving. We have a sewer system that just wasn't built for the kind of weather patterns that we have now. We also know that communities of color and low-income communities are often those with the least amount of access to natural areas and green spaces, and that often have some of the least amount of green infrastructure. I think the city's done a great job in recent years of trying to address some of those issues with like their cloudburst program and getting things like bioswales installed. But we know that this continues to be a question with real urgency. And I think we've seen, unfortunately, in recent years, kind of the worst impacts that some of these flooding events can have, especially with inland flooding events that have reached folks that might live in basement apartments, for instance. So again, this all kind of points to the question of like, how can natural areas kind of fit into the conversation about New York City and how it's managing its stormwater and how we're investing in the care of our forests to really maximize the benefits and the potential that these spaces have to help capture some of this stormwater that we are contending with now more and more frequently. This is one of the lovely graphics from our stormwater report that just kind of gives an overview of the different components of the stormwater infrastructure that we have here in New York City. I won't spend a lot of time because I'm guessing this is a very familiar infrastructure for you all, as folks that really care about stormwater and CSOs and the health of our water. Um, and I think, it kind of goes without saying, there are significant costs that are associated with stormwater management and climate adaptation. We know that we have great infrastructure that is not keeping up the pace of being able to handle stormwater, and we know that that can come at a significant physical and monetary cost. This is a great example of a street being torn up to put in some improved sewer connectivity. We also know that we have frequent rainwater events that challenge our CSO system and make our waterways not safe for recreation. And the costs, it feels like, are just ballooning with each year that we are not addressing this problem. So the city, like I mentioned earlier, has done a really great job of thinking through some of the green infrastructure solutions that might help to kind of intercept some of this rainwater. And we've seen a lot of improvements in increasing the amount of green infrastructure that's going into neighborhoods with bioswales and green roofs and more retention ponds. But from our perspective, we think natural areas really are an underlooked and underestimated kind of piece of the green infrastructure puzzle. So we wanted to try to put some modeling to really show the impact that healthy forests can have. Um, so my colleague Jeff really kind of took a look at some of the various like land cover types in modeling to try and get at the heart of the question of what is the stormwater capture potential of our forested natural areas. New York City, we have the benefit of having a very rich amount of data that kind of gives us a better sense of how the city like what our different ecological cover types are. And we have a high level of classification that's available to us. That's not something that some of our partners in the Forest and Cities Network, for example, can rely on as they're going through this modeling. But this is kind of a great map that shows, you know, the darker the green, the more the ability for stormwater to be absorbed. And no surprise, it's often where we have parks and wetlands and forests. But often some of these stormwater modeling these stormwater models are kind of in a more binary classification of whether something is impervious or not. So we're trying to kind of add a little more level of detail to that by really trying to highlight the natural areas that are within the city. And we know that our natural areas have more distinct features from other forms of green infrastructure and should be really considered kind of separate and apart as a result of that. For instance, a natural area and a forested natural area is very different than a street that has a lot of street trees. Both play a really important role in cooling and carbon capture and stormwater capture, but they're performing very differently because they are very distinct from one another. We also think that there's, you know, obviously a financial case to be made. We've done some modeling efforts in the past to try to kind of understand what the value of stormwater capture is in green spaces and in natural areas. It's an imperfect science, I would say, but some of our estimates kind of range very wildly. And I would say the numbers that are presented here, and I think I understand this correctly from getting the download from my colleague Jeff, but we have on the low end this $8.98 million figure, and that's really based on an assumption that we're not doing anything with the amount of forests that we have. We're kind of leaving them as is. We're not doing anything to increase the health or condition of them. The very high estimate that you see that's up to 2.43 billion is kind of making an assumption that we were to develop and remove all of the 7,000 acres of forest that we have to put in other green infrastructure, and the amount that we would have to kind of spend to put in green infrastructure and gray infrastructure improvements in the absence of our existing over 7,000 acres of forests would cost at least 2.43 billion. So it's really kind of trying to understand like what is the benefit that we have now. And just to give some context for the modeling that we worked from to put together this report, this is really based on what is called the INVEST model, or the Integrated Valuation of Ecosystem Services and Trade-offs. This is work that comes out of the Natural Capital Project at Stanford University. So this is a model that's available to researchers. It's not something that's proprietary to NAC, but it allows us to kind of input some of the various data points that we know about the city of New York and about our natural areas, and kind of helped us arrive at some of the findings that we have from our report. And it uses a variety of information and inputs such as soil typology, land cover, stormwater catch basin locations. My colleague Jeff was able to use all of that data to go through some mathematical modeling to really try to understand what this potential is. I will not try to even go into the mathematical modeling, but if you are interested, happy to connect you with my colleague Jeff, who can give you a more detailed rundown on how you might be able to leverage this model yourself if interested. Like I mentioned, New York City is we're pretty lucky in that we have a really robust amount of data on land cover types. You can see here, this is some of the ecological cover map data that we created at the NAC that really goes into a fair amount of detail about how the city of New York is composed geologically. And this is really essential for us to be able to use these models in a way that gives us kind of a more confident, I think, outcome in terms of the data that we're creating. We have LiDAR data that is really useful, and also trying to understand at a high level how the city of New York is composed and comprised of our various land types and ecologies. I would say for New York City, we primarily have natural area types such as upland forests and upland grasslands and shrubs. We also have a fair amount of wetlands. But I think for the focus of this report, we were looking a lot at the upland forests and grasslands. There aren't as many grasslands, obviously, in New York City, but Staten Island definitely has some. And they play a really key role in intercepting some of our stormwater. We also looked at soil hydrology data, which is distinct from the land cover type. And I think, kind of unsurprisingly, where you see that orange color is most directly correlated with the built environment. So that's where we see kind of the slow infiltration or very slow infiltration rates. And again, you kind of can see a correlation with the location of parks and wetlands, and blue belts being an indicator of where we have better infiltration potential. Um, we also looked at streets as a proxy for CSO entrances. So this is, I think, important to try to understand where water is entering our CSO system. And we used kind of an assumption that road center lines are an indicator of where a CSO might be located. We also have our catch basin system here in New York. Um, and I think there is more information known about the location of those catch basins, but this is obviously an important component of how we're receiving and intercepting our stormwater here in the city, but it's very much in the kind of gray infrastructure kind of category. So we tried to also overlay the location of those catch basins as we were doing this modeling. Um, Here are some runoff coefficients. These are data points that are provided through the USDA's urban hydrology for small watersheds tool. This is my understanding is that this is data that is produced fairly routinely, and I think this is available on a nationwide level. So this is data that can be useful for folks that are outside of New York City in particular, which was one of the considerations that we had as we were doing this report, since we had both a local New York City focus, but also wanted to ensure that this was had some utility for our partners in the Forests and Cities Network. And then we did some modeling using a uniform average rainfall to do the work in this report. So again, this is all kind of a hypothetical. We are not looking at one specific year, but kind of using averages that are based in kind of more recent years that we've had here in New York City as our rainfall patterns have shifted. My colleague Jeff really loves this quote because this is a model. It's not necessarily that the work that we did is rooted in like an absolute, but it is work that is really useful in terms of kind of projecting some of the questions that are really hard to get a full understanding of from a research standpoint. So I'll leave it there. So there are obviously some assumptions and limitations that we had to make. The first being that a model is only as good as its inputs. So, I mentioned a few times New York City is lucky that we have a fair amount of really rich and comprehensive data to work from. I'll talk a little bit about kind of some of our advocacy pushes that are related to this report and how that fits in with the input question. There are also some changes to land cover that occurred between LiDAR flyovers and now. So we know that some of the data that we have is from a moment in time. But we know also that some of those changes are likely fairly limited in scope at this point. So we had to kind of make some assumptions there. We also know that the soil hydrology for New York City, the data that's available is technically incomplete, but we were able to make some assumptions on the data and research side that we were comfortable using for this report. And sewer system connections are treated by proxy with streets. I mentioned that a bit ago. We have a very old and complicated sewer system here in New York City, so it's not that we necessarily had the most complete data to work from because the city of New York is not a new city. But we were able to kind of use some of our proxies for that data. And we also know that certain catch basins and sewers may not always have the same flow rate. I think the images on this slide really illustrate why that's the case. And I think this is something we see when we have some of those extreme rain events. If we have catch basins that are clogged and not free of debris, we're going to see streets that are flooding. So we can't always assume that every catch basin and sewer entry point in New York City is performing at its kind of highest potential. In terms of the results that we found with our modeling, green infrastructure and natural areas, unsurprisingly, play a critical role in capturing stormwater. And you can see some of the data points in the chart here. This is pulled from our report. So I really encourage all of you to take a look at the report to get more detail on this. But you can see we kind of broke down via the modeling the percent capture based on the ecological cover type. So you can see the difference in things like forested wetlands, from freshwater wetlands and tidal wetlands up through maintained lawns and shrubs. I'll talk a little bit about some of these stats in just a moment. But ultimately what we found is that 17% of the stormwater in New York City is captured by natural areas. So if you kind of put that in context with the stat I mentioned earlier in the presentation, with the fact that 12% of New York City's land cover is considered natural areas, we're really seeing these spaces kind of punch above their weight in terms of stormwater capture. In terms of relative capture, we kind of broke this down again by those land types, and here you can kind of see some of the differentiation. So on the last slide, things like non-forest canopy, which is street trees or maintained lawns and shrubs, had a really high capture percentage, but when you're looking at the relative capture, you can see that actually this is where natural areas really come to perform at a much higher level of benefit for the city of New York. So anything that's above the number one shows that it's really taking in more than it's letting run off. And that's, I think, one of the big distinctions that we want to help make with this report is that we know that there are landscaped portions of parks, and green space can often be defined by grass as like just a grass lawn. And while those spaces are absorbing stormwater, there's also a lot of runoff from those spaces that does occur. So they're capturing, but they're not fully absorbing to the potential that some of our wetlands and forests have the ability to. So for us, I think as an organization that thinks a lot about the care and condition of our natural areas, we wanted to kind of understand what the impacts of forest health might be on this model. So we ran some scenarios with the INVEST model to look at, at the current level of health and condition that we have in our forested natural areas, what is the amount of stormwater that's being captured. If we're looking at kind of the best case scenario of a more healthy overall natural forested area system in the city of New York, the potential increases even further. And if we look at a model where there's more degradation across the board in the 7,000 acres of forest that we have here in New York City, we see that potential decline. So for us, these might seem like insignificant changes, but when we're contending with frequent storms and a loss of life. I think that's something that we've seen with kind of disturbing frequency with some of the storms that New York City has had in recent years. These numbers can really make quite a difference, and for us really help make the case for why we should be investing in the care of our natural forested areas. And we did some kind of further modeling and found that if we were to allow all of our forests to degrade, it would be the equivalent stormwater loss of 3,200 acres of forested areas, which is about half of the forest that we have in New York City. So, this again just is a reason for us to continue to push for investments in caring for these assets for a variety of reasons, but stormwater capture being one of them. We also know that the cost of stormwater management is incredibly high. I mentioned a bit ago some of the previous modeling we've done with partners at the Trust for Public Land, where we've estimated if we were to lose our 7,300 acres of forest and kind of overlay that with the charges for stormwater infrastructure payments, that would be about $2.43 billion. So the current model that our colleague Jeff used for this report was looking at the treatment costs that we have currently to estimate a savings yearly of $760 million in green infrastructure costs and stormwater treatment. We also know that the cost to the city of New York to maintain the existing kind of gray infrastructure system that we have is extremely high. So in FY24, we pulled the numbers and found that $1.6 billion was spent by the city of New York in just sewer maintenance alone. So that's an incredibly high number. It's not surprising that we have to spend that much on sewer maintenance in a city with a sewer system as old as ours. But again, it just kind of to us makes the case for why we should be investing in forest management and forest care because they can play such a key role in helping to kind of offset the load that's entering our sewer system during extreme rain events. So some of the potential future directions for this research would be, kind of moving beyond using averages to doing more event-based simulations. Again, this is a model where you can input the data as you see fit. So that's a direction that our research and conservation team is considering. We also have an interest in potentially looking at the impacts of invasive species in vinelands. That's not something that we have a lot of data on currently, but we know that in many of our forested natural areas, there is an increasing proportion of invasive vines that have been found to be present in the forest plots that we assess at the NAC. And we do this work citywide. So I think from a management perspective, this is an increasing concern. And we are curious from kind of a research standpoint whether there will be any impacts on the ability for those forest plots that are dealing with some of those invasive vines to be able to have kind of full stormwater capture potential. And then we're also looking at kind of integrating this modeling, the data from this modeling with some of the other data that we've gathered on the kind of carbon capture benefits of our natural areas, on the cooling benefits of our natural areas. So kind of putting this all in conversation with some of the other data that our organization has been gathering over the years. We also think that from an advocacy standpoint, this really helps to kind of make the case for why we as a city need to be doing more to invest in caring for our natural areas. We already know that they're providing such a critical role in increasing the biodiversity and health of the city, but also having public access, but to kind of layer on the fact that we know that natural areas are providing such a significant benefit when it comes to something like stormwater capture, we think just helps kind of make the case. And we hope that decision makers will kind of hear that call. In our forest management framework report that we issued in 2018, we called for a $385 million investment over a 25-year span for the city of New York to ensure that we're caring for our forested natural areas to the greatest extent possible. So that remains for us kind of a North Star in terms of our advocacy. The modeling suggests that healthier forests have a higher ability to capture and retain stormwater. So again, this just to us helps make the case for why we should be investing in healthier forests and their care. But on top of that, it's not just about caring for and doing that forest restoration work, but also the ongoing monitoring that's needed to ensure that we understand what's happening in our forested natural areas without the ability to actually be on the ground in our forest plots to kind of see what the management concerns and pressures are. We'll have a lot of challenges to effectively manage them. So all of this requires a level of investment that the city hasn't really been making in recent years. We've had a few kind of drips and drabs of significant funding, but a lot of it has been on a one-shot basis. And we think that this funding needs to be made more kind of routine and that the benefits it would provide really outweigh the costs. It feels to us like a very smart investment that the city of New York could make that would provide a lot of benefits to New Yorkers. So what you can do for those of you who live in the city of New York, we're always trying to get folks to help kind of join us in calls to action around the budget and trying to ensure that we're properly caring for and funding the care of our natural areas. So if you haven't already heard from me on that front, you may very well in the future. but also just kind of helping to tell the story of why these spaces are so important. I think a lot of New Yorkers don't realize we have such a robust network of natural areas and forests and wetlands, and they're really special spaces that deserve protection and care for a variety of reasons, stormwater capture being just one of them. For folks that are on the city planning side or on the agency side, our hope is that, this data will help to inform the folks that are making decisions about stormwater and climate adaptation planning to think about forested natural areas as a part of that kind of toolbox, if you will, of solutions, and to not kind of set them aside and not view them as a really critical component of how the city is contending with its increasing and ongoing needs to intercept and capture stormwater. So we would love to work with you if you are in that bucket. Don't hesitate to reach out. I'll make sure that I put my email in the chat if it's not already there. And I will end by sharing this slide. We have a stormwater survey, would welcome your participation in it. If you would like to do so, you can also follow us and tag us on your social channels. I'm happy to share a set of these slides with Michelle and the team at the coalition. There are actually some sample social media graphics if you want to help kind of uplift this work. But anyway, I hope this was helpful and informative. I'm going to stop sharing just a second, and I will check in on the chat. But thank you all for listening to me talk about this new report. Happy to try and answer any questions I can.
Thank you, Emily. This is great work. I've already thought of so many potential ways in which we could have our partners, member organizations, students, and maybe in conversation with DP continue this work. This is great. Michelle, Shino, Holly, others, did we have time for Q&A right now, or are we jumping to the next, to Amy's presentation and then a little Q&A? What do
Yeah,
we think?
we have time for Q&A.
Okay. So, and feel free to raise your hand or even unmute if we're not that many people in here today. So if you have a couple of questions for Emily and her team.
And I'll just quickly chime in. If it hasn't already been put in the chat, I will put in my email address as well as my colleague Jeff Clark's email address. But Joel, I see you have your hand raised. Joel, I think you're on mute.
Do you hear me now?
Yes.
Yep.
Okay. You showed the studies of quantifying the runoff. Has there been any studies done in terms of the quality of the runoff? Whether it's from industrial areas or non-industrial?
That's a great question. My understanding, Joel, is that we don't, this model didn't necessarily account for where the water was coming from. I think it was kind of just looking, like the model looks at all of the different components. I confess I am not the person who was running those models. So I'd be happy to take that question to my colleague Jeff, but I don't think that we had that level of detail. I think that's definitely a potential path for further research and inquiry though. But great question. Apologies, I don't have a...
I think that would be a big help in terms
Yeah.
of planning. Okay.
Yeah. Thank you. And I see, Rob, I see you have your hand raised.
Yeah, thank you so much. We're so happy to have this. And I'm a board member of the Bronx Council of Environmental Quality, and we're really looking forward to working very closely with you. I just had a question about how this translates over to decision-making at the city agency. Obviously, we're so happy to see DEP here today. But I wanted to ask your assessment of whether the city budget, let's start with the city, possibly state, but let's start with the city. Does it have the appropriate names, okay, for and fiscal buckets, okay, for the things that your report says that nature can do, okay? And I'm asking because we often at BCQ find that together city agencies really do have a shared interest in natural areas. And yet, as many people in city government will tell us, it's still kind of like whack-a-mole about when it comes to actually funding and responding. So do you have a good, are you satisfied with the kind of structure of, let's start with city, for actually adopting? Obviously you work with DEP and DPR, but is there the proper kind of fiscal and titles for initiatives that would implement and fund these? And if they're not, what would you call it? What would be your title for a interagency fund or office that would implement the report? Fun question.
Yeah. Feels like the $1 million question. I mean, I think, while we work closely with our partners at the city, we also have spent many years trying to advocate for an increase in resources. And frankly, I don't know that we've yet seen the level of investment that we would like and that we feel is sufficient to really meet the needs of caring for our forests and wetlands. And, I think your question gets kind of at the heart of one of the complications of the work that we do. While so much of our natural areas are located within New York City parks, we also know that we're contending with New York State Parks, the National Park Service. There are landholders that have a significant proportion of tidal wetlands, grasslands, forests that aren't the Parks Department, and it makes it a little bit of a kind of alphabet soup of different jurisdictions and landholders that span different, there's different levels of kind of who's accountable to who, right? Like with parks, we know that kind of the buck stops often with the mayor's office as an agency that's under mayoral control. But it gets much harder when you're dealing with those kind of additional levels of bureaucracy at levels that the city often doesn't have as much control over. So I think it's something that I don't think we have a solution. We definitely work a lot in coalition for that very reason. I think to try to figure out what are ways that we can kind of move to a better way of managing these assets and protecting these assets. Assets feels like not the right word to use, but like having forests and wetlands that remain in the city of New York is rare and precious, and it feels like it can be really hard to get that message out there. So I think that's something that we try to do as an organization to draw attention to the fact that they exist. I think that's part of it. Like public awareness is low, and I think that's part, honestly, from my perspective as someone who's been doing advocacy for a long time, when you don't have the public kind of speaking out about the importance of these issues, it makes it that much harder to advocate for elected officials to make a high level of investment. So I think that's like kind of one point. And so, really grateful to see all of you on this call today. I know many of you are part of organizations and coalitions that are helping to kind of shine that spotlight. But I think it gets really complicated, especially when you're thinking about water and wetlands, and there's so many different players. We did a report last year on wetlands mitigation and just trying to kind of understand the policy landscape in New York City. And it's really complicated. I think it's even more complicated now, given what's happening in DC. So I think, it's a question that we don't have an answer to, but we would love to kind of continue to work in partnership with all of you to try and get there, because I don't know, I have to try to remain optimistic that there is a solution and a path forward, right, to get this issue more front and center with folks, because it plays so many positive roles and benefits for New Yorkers, kind of on all fronts. It feels like a really, yeah, I know that's probably not a satisfying answer, Rob, but
oh, it's just I share your we will do everything we can, as you know. Educating our decision makers is really our, and but we're so grateful to have this project of the science that you've provided. I'm going to go back to next year's too. So thanks very much. And we do have someone who really is a true believer, who's, I believe, going to be speaking after you. So there's really good news there. So thank you very much for all you've done.
Thank you, Robert. And thank you, Emily. And I think this is a good place to transition, if that's okay for everyone, to Amy's presentation. I just want to highlight that, DEP is doing a lot of work that does seek to transcend these boundaries potentially of what their usual scope of work has been, from, diving into the green infrastructure and more comprehensive and integrated water management perspective. I actually just took a quick look at the city comptroller's website just to see if there was any mention of any of these potential budget connections. And there's a report on stormwater preparedness and flooding and flood readiness and the stormwater management system, but it makes no mention of green infrastructure, let alone natural areas. but that could be a possible, a potential place of integration as well. But thank you, Emily, again, and thank you, Natural Areas Conservancy and your whole team for that work. And now we'll transition to Amy to see what DEP is up to and maybe where there some of these intersections to really try and enhance our stormwater management capacity in the city. Thanks again, Emily. Amy, your turn.
Great. Thanks, Leonelle, and thanks, Emily. Great presentation. I look forward to diving into the report. But good afternoon, folks. Great to see familiar faces and some new faces as well. Michelle asked me to give an update on Tibbetts, and I'm going to throw a little update on Cloudburst as well into the mix. So have just kind of brief updates on both. And I'll introduce myself. I'm Amy Motsney, Director of Integrated Water Management at New York City DEP. And I think our Assistant Commissioner, Melissa Enoch, is also on listening in today. So we're both here to respond to some questions after this presentation. Let me see if I can share my screen.
Amy, we see your presenter view.
Yeah,
Just so
I'm
you know. Yep.
swapping. There we go. Did that work?
Yes, that
Okay,
works.
great. Somebody showed me that trick recently, so um all right, so I see Rob and Karen are online today. You guys have seen these slides many, many times, but I figured I'd give a little bit of context on Tibbetts Brook daylighting for any newcomers in the room. So, the main update here is that we've been working really, really hard the last year, really, to kind of get our bid package ready. So we're anticipating going out to bid later this year. And so going to give some updates on the status, but also just talk a little bit through the project. So here's a beautiful rendering. This was with our recent Public Design Commission package. This is just south of Van Cortlandt Park, where the greenway starts, the elevated greenway that begins to run along the former CSX corridor. So pretty true to form in terms of where the final design is headed. So figured I'd start with the image, and then just for those that may not be familiar with the concept of daylighting, it is a technical engineering term that's used to describe restoration projects that redirect waterways that have previously been buried in pipes into an above ground channel. So they can allow the separation of runoff or groundwater from sanitary sewage, reducing both wet and dry weather flows to treatment plants. So huge benefits in combined sewer areas where you can use daylighting as a tactic to reduce or eliminate CSO discharges. So I love to show an example of built work that's not too far away. Here's a sort of series of photos that show a daylighting project in Yonkers. This is the Sawmill River daylighting project. So a lot of precedent images and details that we've been using from this project that you'll see in the Tibbetts work. To give a little background on the history, so Tibbetts Brook is, a creek that currently exists north of New York City, but it ends when you get to Van Cortlandt Park in the Bronx. So the sort of end point of the surface expression of the stream is at this weir in Hester and Puro's Mill Pond in Van Cortlandt Park. So this is the location where the tributary flows and stormwater flows enter the Broadway sewer, which runs under Van Cortlandt Park. And this is a pipe that takes combined sewer overflow to the Wards Island wastewater recovery facility. So all those flows are being directed into our combined system, and we know all of the issues that can cause when it's overburdened. The historic stream, I think it's interesting to show this map. It runs through what is now the Kingsbridge neighborhood in the Bronx. So the path for daylighting is not necessarily following the historic stream corridor, but rather where there's available land in the former CSX rail corridor, which is this dashed line that you can see on the map. So the historic stream was covered and directed into the sewer in the early 1900s. And when the rail line started to no longer be utilized for rail traffic, the community started to advocate for Tibbetts Brook daylighting. And a lot of this was happening as parts of the rail corridor within Van Cortlandt Park were being converted to parts of the Greenway. So this concept really emerged within the community and came to DEP and Parks. This is a joint project, so we're working together across agencies on daylighting. And for DEP, we did initial feasibility study that under the citywide open waters long-term control plan to see what the benefit would be for CSO reduction. And, when said and done, when this project is in place, we anticipate it'll reduce CSOs to the Harlem River by about 220 million gallons a year. So big, huge benefits there, which really allowed DEP to take the project to the next phase. So for the purposes of this project, the daylighting refers to diverting the historic Tibbetts Brook away from the combined sewer into a new constructed conduit. This new conduit is going to allow flows through a new weir that will be constructed in the pond in Van Cortlandt Park, which will eventually connect to the Harlem River at the regulator, which is on the Metro North site here at the bottom of the project in the map here. So lots of community involvement along the way. At the onset of the project, we established the Tibbetts Advisory Group, or the TAG. So yeah, Bob and Karen, I mentioned, are on the call. They've been with us every step of the way through this process. We've had quarterly meetings pretty much throughout the design process with lots of feedback coming from the community that's really benefited the overall project. We've done a lot of site visits and other events to really build awareness about the project, and have worked with other stakeholders, including our partners at Parks and other city agencies that are very much involved in this process, DOT as part of the Greenway intersection, and then other agencies that are, commenting, reviewing, and approving the design plans. So this is another rendering showing the new side weir that will be constructed. This is where the flows into the stream corridor will begin. So this is just showing that sort of rendering that was provided to Public Design Commission earlier this year. And just kind of giving a quick project overview. So we really began advancing the conceptual design in the fall of 2022. We've moved through all design phases and are, at a final design point as of spring 2025. So as I mentioned, we're really preparing all the documents for our bid package. That includes, final tweaks on design drawings, specifications, and finalizing easement agreements that are in place, or that are going to be in place before we can post this for advertisement. Still aiming for start of construction in 2026. So just condensing some of the more recent milestones here, kind of some of the big broad strokes are that we closed on the CSX property in June of 2024. That was a major, major milestone for us. So we're still celebrating over here, and including in this milestone set of bullets. In August of 2024, we received ULURP approval on the Metro North Railroad easement acquisition. So that's, was a critical thing to have in hand as we finalized the easement agreement with Metro North. In summer of 2024, we began a phase 1 lake restoration, which is mainly invasives management on the lake in Van Cortlandt Park. So this is a multi-year contract for invasives control that will be ongoing, until the construction begins on the daylighting. In early 2025, we completed design for daylighting, as I mentioned earlier, and kind of right around the same time, we onboarded our construction manager. So this is Jacob's Civil Engineering. They'll be leading the construction management phase of the work. Right now, they're working on a constructability review, assessing all of the work that's been done to date, and then prepping our package for bid. This spring, we also completed design for track replacement on the Metro North site. So this was a component of the work that needed to be incorporated as we're building an underground conduit on that site. And then this fall, we hope to finalize the easement agreement with Metro North as well. So we've been working through negotiations the past year or so. We're hoping to really reach a final agreement by the end of this month. It's going really well. Just some like final adjustments to legal language, but generally have worked through all the sticky points and are hoping to have this in place very soon. And then, yeah, fall will be advertisement for bid and construction in 2026. So just a couple of little notes about phase one. I know some folks have been out there seeing work in the field this past summer. So really the phase one work involves Phragmites and water chestnut management. So methods in place to address both types of invasives. The contractor is Stephen Dubner, and they began work last year. We had ongoing activities through this summer, including the installation of the pilot living shoreline. So that has been established, and folks can go out and see it in the field. And we also have been working on water chestnut and Phragmites removal this spring and summer, and this work will continue through 2026. And then just noting some of those milestones kind of completed over the last year, all the approvals with city agencies, final approval with Public Design Commission. Really what remains are these unchecked boxes, finalizing our agreement with Metro North and getting the bid package ready. So I think that's pretty much it. Should I pause for questions, Leonel, or just go right into it?
Maybe just go right into it, because I think we're trying to just combine the questions at the end, so we have a little time left for hats and other items.
Fantastic. And this will be really brief. I was here, I think, in the spring and gave kind of a big overview of Cloudburst and all the work that's been happening on the design process on the four hubs mainly. So just going to give a sort of brief update on that. Please do scan these QR codes to learn a little bit more about the projects. We did a recent round of public meetings with all the Cloudburst hub communities this spring. So there's presentations and one-pagers that you can pull to kind of dive into the details for the individual hubs. But if you want to stay involved, also the second QR code takes you to our newsletter page, so you can get on the mailing list and get notifications as meetings are happening in different hubs. But the first thing I wanted to highlight is the Cloudburst pilot project at South Jamaica Houses in Southeast Queens. I know folks have been following the process, from the early feasibility study to the planning study in Southeast Queens. This pilot project on NYCHA, South Jamaica Houses, emerged, and we've been showing this rendering for many, many years. So showing a construction photo from 2024, and very, very happy to report that this is our first completed construction project for Cloudburst on South Jamaica Houses. So the Sunga basketball court looks very much like the rendering. I know some folks have been out to see it, but it's absolutely beautiful, and we're really, really proud to have this asset in place. And yeah, look forward to taking folks out there in the coming years. But this will be a really great, precedent proof of concept to continue expanding the work that we're doing on Cloudburst throughout the city. So kind of going into the 4 hubs, and I think a lot of folks here are familiar with the Cloudburst hubs, but basically these are sort of the scaled up version of Cloudburst, where we're using techniques for absorbing, storing, and transferring stormwater kind of at the neighborhood or subcatchment scale to really address flooding impacts in a 10-year storm. So the solutions are primarily precast porous concrete that spans the neighborhood scale, and then subsurface storage that really starts to hold this water to alleviate some of the flooding impacts that we're seeing, really based on our stormwater flood maps, which folks I know are using this data quite a bit. So this is really the underlying data that's informing both the planning and siting and modeling of these projects. So I'm just going to give quick updates on the 4 hubs. So Corona in Queens, we're working towards our 90% design milestone. We are not going to public design commission for this one because there are no surface features in this hub. So everything is subsurface, but the design itself includes about 2.9 acres of precast porous concrete in the parking lanes, and then 3 subsurface detention sites. All in all, the total green infrastructure storage is anticipated to reduce flooding during a 10-year, 1-hour storm by 14.2 acres, or an estimated 30% reduction. So top image here shows the schematic. The red lines are the precast porous concrete network, and then subsurface detention at the New York Hall of Science, 2 locations, and then 1 in the Park of Americas. In Casina, we're also very close to a 90% milestone, and we will be going to Public Design Commission in September. And I think in terms of outreach, this is a hub that we have a fall update happening. So I don't have much to report on as we're gearing up for a substantial update on the 17th. So folks will probably receive, if you're on our newsletter, notifications for this meeting. So please do come out September 17th. But here we're anticipating final design in early 2026. Moving to Parkchester Morris Park, also at about 90% design. We're actually a little bit further along on our Public Design Commission submissions here, with final design going forth in fall of 2025. We here have the same sort of think precast porous concrete network, and then subsurface detention at Caserta Playground and PS 83. This project will have about 5 million gallons of water that's stored through the different subsurface detention that's happening. Here's a rendering at Caserta Playground. This is going to be a really beautiful space that's being improved through this work. Updating some of the play equipment and installing rain gardens on the perimeter. There's more renderings on the website, so encourage folks to take a look. And then last but not least, East New York or Hendricks Linden hub. So again, this one's very close to 90% design. This one doesn't require PDC approval. We just had the update in August, so we're getting our materials on the website. Those should be posted any day now. But this one has 2 subsurface detention sites, one in Linden Park, so substantial storage underneath the track that's in Linden Park. And then this triangle, Wyckoff Triangle, will be improved and have a tank underneath it. Here we're able to do some surface improvements, increasing some of the canopy and installing some seating for the bus stop that's here, and really improving this space. So that's all I have. Happy to take any questions. Thank you.
Okay, questions from the group?
Amy? Hello?
Yep. Hey,
Yeah,
Lynn.
How are you?
Good, how are you?
Good. I attended an event in Hoboken a month or two ago by Rebuild by Design and saw what they are doing out there and how they are combining, dealing with flooding and CSO and creating these new recreation areas. And a lot of what I saw there are the tools that you're using here. I was wondering, has there some years ago, I had attended an event that had to do with the CSOs into the Flushing Creek and Flushing Bay. And at that time, they were talking about how these are the most sewage contaminated waters in New York City. I don't know if that's changed since then, but what would it take in terms of, building a tank? How big would that need to be to clean that up? I know at one point they were talking about, I think 35 years ago, they were talking about a 40 million gallon tank in Flushing Meadow Park, but that couldn't happen because it was being used. It was a very popular recreation area. So I'm just wondering, do we know what it would actually take to clean up all of that pollution or most of it?
Oh, that's a big question. And I may not have all the answers
Yeah,
here today.
sure.
And like I said, Assistant Commissioner Melissa Enoch is on. I don't know, Melissa, you're maybe working a little closer on some of the Flushing Bay issues, but there's a number of you know, there's a lot of work happening in that area right now, and a lot of different solutions for CSO control and stormwater management. But I don't know the exact size of a tank.
Well, if it would be better, I could maybe just write to you. It
Yeah.
doesn't have to be
Yeah,
done here.
yeah, you can certainly send us your question again. And sorry, I had someone pop into my office while I was kind of listening, and I understand your question is on CSO reduction activities for Flushing Bay. And yeah, we have an approved long-term control plan for Flushing Bay. We have implemented projects that have significantly reduced CSOs there. We have upcoming projects that will do an additional, 50% or so reduction in CSO. But Flushing Bay is a big priority project for us, so there's a lot happening. And recently, we've been looking at the remaining long-term control plan, like big gray infrastructure projects, and taking them through another resiliency focus to make sure we're getting dual benefits from those. So there's a lot happening. And we can certainly get back to you with some more info.
Great. How long a stretch is that Tibbetts Brook daylighting, and like how much land do you have to work with wise?
So the length of the entire project, it's about 1.9 miles. So we're pretty constrained in the area that's through the former rail corridor. So the pathway will be about 12 feet, and then there's like a range of channel width. Actually, I can send you, Len, a presentation that has like the entire transect of all the CSX corridors. So that area is pretty constrained. Within Van Cortlandt Park, there's a little bit more space to work with. So we're able to kind of create a more naturalized stream condition that has like pools and riffles. So there's a wider footprint in the park itself, but then it gets pretty narrow when you get into the corridor.
Daylighting, I don't want to take a
Len.
lot of time, but I just want to make
Sorry,
sure.
we do have to move on a
Okay,
little
yeah,
bit.
go
I'm
ahead.
sorry, just because
That's
there are
okay.
3 other questions.
Sure.
But thank you for your
Sure.
great questions. If you want to type in the rest of your question, maybe Amy can answer in the chat. Thank you, though. Great questions. Shino?
So just to start, Flushing Bay already has a CSO detention tank. It was 40 something million gallons.
Yeah.
So just to put it out there, it's being built. My question though for you, Amy, the cloudburst, by the way, I'm just so thrilled to see Tibbetts Brook moving forward. That was something that Dart Westfall talked to me about 25 plus years ago. And I know those folks from BCEQ have been talking about it for over 30 years. So this is really, really exciting and I can't wait to see it. The question for cloudbursts, those underground storage tanks, are they conventional detention tanks where the water is actually going to be sent to the wastewater treatment plants, or are they infiltrating any of that water into the ground?
No infiltration, so they have
Okay.
a bottom, basically.
So that water will be sent to the treatment facility after the rain. Okay,
Yes.
thank you.
Go ahead.
Hi, Amy. Nice to see you. I'm actually recovering from a surgery, so I'm not going to go off camera, but nice to see everybody. I had a quick question about the kind of, you presented on the 4 initial cloudburst hubs here. I know there's been some funding issues with the next stage, but I think there's been a recent block of the FEMA, of the sort of Trump administration's efforts to react the FEMA brick funding. I guess where is DEP at with the next stage of the cloudburst, projects, and how can we best?
You might have broken up a little bit at the end of your question, but I think generally just asking for an update on federal funding status, if I heard you correctly.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
Okay.
Federal funding.
Go ahead, Amy. I think that was the question.
Okay. So, as of now, we're continuing to monitor the funding landscape, very complicated process. And, as of now, we have not received, official notices from FEMA. So we are proceeding with design, and, going to take these to, shovel ready, final design. And I guess, Melissa, anything to add on that point?
Yeah, it's gonna be really hard. There's not enough city capital funding to fund all these projects. So we are in the final stages. We're nearing final design completion. So we will have to make some hard decisions about which projects move forward and when. So that's where we are. We don't have that laid out right now, but there definitely are impacts to the program, to the cloudburst projects as a result of the federal funding cuts.
Lois?
Hi, Amy. It's been a few years and it's nice talking with you.
Nice to see you, Lewis.
Or almost, Amy.
Almost see you. Hear you.
Um, who will be responsible for the surface security and surface maintenance on all these projects?
So you're asking about Tibbetts and Cloudburst?
Yeah, I assume that each will be different, perhaps, but just generally speaking, who's going to be responsible for security and who's going to be responsible for maintenance?
So for Tibbetts, the park features, the greenway features, most of the surface features are going to be maintained and overseen by Parks as the landowner, and then DEP will maintain many of the hydrologic components, the underground components, the weirs and other infrastructure. So we have an MOU with Parks to sort of dissect those different roles and responsibilities, and pretty much all aspects of the project have somebody maintaining, and we've it's a working document that we continue to go back to as changes are made in the design, and will continue to be updated as construction takes place. So on Cloudburst, kind of a similar story. It depends on the landowners. So those projects are, spanning a lot of different agency jurisdictions. You have parks and DOT and schools involved, and obviously DEP. So similarly, DEP will be maintaining the infrastructure, the assets, and then some of the surface features will be maintained by the agency landowners. So as part of that kind of similar process, working on MOUs that really address those roles and responsibilities.
Thank you.
I just want to bring up the important part of M's question that got cut out. It's actually, what can the advocates do to make sure you get what you need to move forward? So I'm paraphrasing what M put in the chat, but that is an important part of the question. So I wanted to put it out there.
Yeah, I mean, I think communicating to elected officials the importance of the projects and that the agencies, because remember the Cloudburst funding was split between Parks, DOT, and DEP, so it's not just DEP that's been impacted by this. So, communicating the importance of, cross-agency drainage improvement projects like these that deliver short-term solutions to communities who, are really suffering and need longer-term solutions as well. So communicating that to the elected officials is important, I think. Yeah, that's where we are.
Joel, and then we'll switch to the next part of the presentation.
I might have missed something because my computer zogged out. Has there been any work with NYCHA? There's a lot of acreage on NYCHA lands. Can you maybe tell me specifically what's been happening there?
Yeah, so one project maybe you missed, Joel, I gave a quick flash of the South Jamaica Houses project, Cloudburst project that's in Southeast Queens. So that's NYCHA, a site that we implemented our first Cloudburst pilot. So, NYCHA's also been advancing efforts on, Cloudburst. So they have a couple of projects in design. And yeah, they're a big stakeholder and have been really working on the resiliency side of things as well.
Okay, on the sort of the negative side, I represent several tenant associations at NYCHA, and there's many FEMA funded or state funded rebuild projects, and the soil is not covered. It's very poor construction, and there's a lot of stormwater management problems, I would say, at most sites. And we've brought this to attention to DEC and DEP, and there hasn't been much action. We're having a lot of runoff, and it's toxic runoff from those sites. So I ask the request that you look into it. And we can give you locations of several of those sites.
Yeah, Joel, I can give you my contact information. If you want to reach out, I can
Sure.
send you a message. Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you all. I'm gonna mute you there, Joel. Thank you. Thank you, Amy. Thanks, Melissa, also for jumping in. And thank you to the Natural Areas Conservancy team as well for your presentation. So now I think we're just gonna move on to the HATS, the Army Corps portion of this meeting. As I believe, I would hope most of you are aware of, if not all of you, the Army Corps has come forward and has produced a report for public comment with 3 what they're calling actionable items that are components of the previous proposal for coastal resilience that was that was in a tier 1 environmental impact statement in 2022. The idea is that these distinct components will be presented for funding and for implementation independently, but that they're still within, within the spirit and connected to the overall plan, as well as to other coastal resilience projects across the region. The report was shared, was posted to the public on July 25th or 6th, I believe. And the end of the public comment period is on Monday, August 25th, 2025. So we've been trying to coordinate with our member organizations that have also, especially the ones that are directly impacted by the projects, and also with our broader coalitions such as Rise to Resilience and a working group of various organizations and coalitions across the region that's been coordinating, or at least trying to get more information and get more input into the Army Corps process. And so what I hope that we can do today for the next 20 to 30 minutes, depending on how long we feel is effective to spend on it right now, is to kind of do a recap, maybe from everyone's perspective, but just a quick recap on where the projects are and where they're situated. Maybe if those of you like Karen, and I think Michelle, you're here from Hackensack River Keep, or anyone from a member org that's directly impacted wants to talk about those specific projects when I pull them up. And then maybe what we can do is Holly and I and Shino and Michelle can pull up a quick document, and we can share some of the common comments and goals that have been documented by these various groups, and we can come up with a couple of points that we might build a swim letter from, which we would then share with you all upon distribution. And of course, anyone and everyone is welcome to share your own letters. I know River Keeper has one. Does that seem somewhat reasonable, if not completely clear to everyone? Okay, so let me just, Karen, do you have anything to say right away before I show just what the projects are for those who are not fully aware? Okay, let me just share screen really quickly, and then just and then I'll put in links after giving the mic up. So, and let me know if you all can see this. Okay, so just so we all know, this is the current report that's been released as of July. We'll put a link to that. That's all posted on this wonderful, accessible website that also has the story map from the previous project. That has these posters that summarize the projects. And it also has additional details and appendices on the various reports and their potential environment and their the analysis from the Army Corps about each of them. And that's over here on the left as well. Now, just for a quick point of reference, there has been an environmental assessment of the 3 projects. As you can see, they're an east riser with in the Hackensack in the Meadowlands. There is a coastal protection or flood barrier or flood wall system that's been proposed for the Harlem River, and then a nature-based solution wetland ecosystem restoration project in Oakwood Beach, Staten Island, adjacent to a stormwater treatment facility. And some of these posters begin to get to some of the impacts. This is what was shared in the in-person public sessions by the Army Corps. The recordings should be on their website as well for you to get more information. Again, these are the 3 projects, and forgive me for scrolling through. This is, these are in portrait format. But the East Riser is a tank that will, and a riser that will help with some of the some of the comments that were given back to the Army Corps a few years ago had to do with integrating multi-hazard flooding. And their idea is that each of these projects will begin to represent some of, respond to some of the comments. So the East Riser is ostensibly supposed to try to also not only deal with coastal flooding and as it comes up the Meadowlands, but also with riverine flooding and storm flooding. The Oakwood Beach project is their attempt at really looking at nature-based solutions, nature-based features, as they call them, and how those could be integrated into projects. And then the Harlem River project is really intended to begin to integrate storm protection further upstream, but also in connection and tying into other projects, other existing elements, and the dense urban fabric of New York City and the region. I will say one specific point to make here is that the first two projects that I mentioned, Oakwood Beach and East Rise, and please correct me anyone if I've misrepresented this from the Army Corps presentations and conversations, but those two projects are meant to be developed and submitted for Water Resources Defense Act funding for 2026. Harlem River was initially supposed to do that as well, and that's partially why these were picked. However, there may be additional design development and coordination that needs to be done because of the complexity of the existing conditions and the potential impacts on various communities and the waterways of the Harlem River. And Karen, again, I know you will jump in on this one.
Right.
And I think maybe what we can do right now, I don't know, Karen, if you want to discuss a little bit of the Harlem River project, just for a couple minutes, and some of the comments that the various organizations in the working group has, and then maybe Michelle, if you have a minute, if you want to also discuss from Hackensack Riverkeeper and those organizations, what your input is on the on the Oakwood Beach one. Does that sound reasonable to everyone?
Yeah,
Okay.
I'll be fast. So
Okay.
the Harlem River one, since it's not really going to get funded, it's not going to be that important, but you still need to comment on it because there are things there that are a problem for the other side of the river, which is in the Bronx. And so they're thinking about putting like a wall. They're not sure how high the wall is on either side, the river side or on the land side. And that's the land side and the seaward side. And it goes for a pretty big area. I don't believe that this was in part of the original presentation. I think mostly the original one had it much lower in the South Bronx. So we were always concerned about the impact of this wall on a boomerang effect into the Bronx. Like where is the water going to go? If it's not going on that wall, it's going to go on the other side. So we're not really too happy about this project. And we also have complicated by a couple of other projects that are in the same area, including the Greenway, which is supposed to be out in the water, which we're not happy about that project either, because they shouldn't be putting stuff out in the water. And also another project, which is that we have a feasibility study with the Army Corps of Engineers to do a review of feasibility of living shorelines along both sides of the Harlem River. And so it's kind of interesting that they decided to put this up, even though they know that they're going to do this feasibility study, when they're not even doing, like, they're not even thinking about, of course, there's a wall there, but that doesn't mean you can't do a living shoreline. There's plenty of ways of doing living shoreline. So I just want to say that. And also, I asked the question about what your water budget was, and they're just not taking into consideration the impact of the floods in these two areas, in both sides of the river. And so if you know Upper Manhattan, it is pretty hilly over there. It's very hilly, actually. And so water is just shooting down. And so they're not looking at that because they don't do CSOs. I have no idea what that means. I couldn't figure it out. So, but we are going to comment and add comments into it, even though it's only a month, which everybody was upset about that because it's the summertime.
Yeah, it's been a challenging time to get everyone to even come up with common goals.
Yes.
Yeah, and thank you, Karen, for that. I do think that some of the common responses, and Drew, just give me 1 second. Some of the common responses, as I said, I just want to switch gears really quickly, and I'll try and share this because right now it's an editable document, and I'm not sure if it's meant to be edited together at this point. So I'll create a PDF before the end of the meeting, once we get into more active discussion. But there is the HATS working group with Rise to Resilience, SWIM, Natural Parks and Areas Conservancy, Environmental Defense Fund, all of these organizations, New York City Environmental Justice Alliance, were trying to create some common goals that have been updated from the last project. And I think these are some of the main ones. And of course, as SWIM, we're going to be really looking at this and at the comment letter from Riverkeeper. And Em, maybe you can speak about that in a minute if you're able to. That really looks more at the water impacts, but really also addresses the engagement process, as you just noted, Karen, because while it might be the official requirement to have 30 days, this is really a lot to take on and take in after 30 days. And the comment period and their first meeting was before the comment period opened, but before they released the report. So that was very strange as well. But again, multiple flood hazards need to be addressed, prioritizing people and communities that were slated for induced flooding in the previous proposal over property value in terms of their cost benefit analysis. Some of these things are actually moving forward and have made an impact, at least for now, with the Army Corps and their response, protecting critical infrastructure such as the wastewater treatment plants and the roads and transit infrastructure, and then meaningfully engage communities beyond these 30-minute periods, maximizing nature and nature-based solutions, and keeping the whole scope comprehensive. I think personally, one of the things that I noted right away is that questions that came up is why wouldn't each of these actionable elements try and encapsulate all of the general comments that everyone had? Why wouldn't all of them try to integrate to some extent nature-based solutions? Why wouldn't all of them try to mitigate multiple flood hazards and so on? And so I will share this as part of the discussion. It is in the document that hopefully we'll have a few minutes to look at. And maybe you all can keep adding some comments too. And then we'll go from there. So, okay, go ahead, Drew.
I was just gonna say, so I'm from Hudson Riverkeeper. I've been working on Riverkeeper's comments on this.
I have this open here. Sorry, I have that
No
open
worries.
here if you want to walk through it.
Em's the one who's usually on these calls.
Sorry, I
but
didn't recognize you, but the name
Not at
itself.
all. So I just wanted to highlight some of our concerns. We talk about the landward versus the seaward alignment, and the Army Corps really seems to have favored the seaward alignment. That's what they did their cost analysis on. I think the assumption was that would be the more expensive cost, so they didn't really move forward with a proper analysis of the landward cost, which is a concern we've raised. Also, if you're not reading the appendices, you might not have picked up on the fact that the proposed seawall, that's a lot of C's, is actually going to be constructed 25 feet into the Harlem River, so into the navigation channel. And that's a major concern for us that we don't think was highlighted appropriately within the main text of the report. And we have a lot of questions that come up from that. I think in addition to concerns about stormwater that have come up, and CSOs, we're concerned about the actual design. There also talk about these complementary natural-based solutions that will be incorporated, but they're all hypothetical at this point, yet they're accounted for within the assessment of the cost benefits. And so that's been a major concern for us. If you're going to include them in evaluating, the impacts of this project, then they should be finalized into the design so that the public can comment. What we learned at the public meetings last week that they held in Harlem was that this project, this Harlem River Actionable Element, is not moving forward anytime soon. They don't even have funding to do the mandatory studies they need to do to move forward. So this is going to take years to move through. So while we're frustrated with the 30 days and it's important to get comments out now, there's going to be a lot of opportunity to comment on this in the future as the Army Corps continues to develop.
That's a good point. I do think it's important to comment on some of this though, because this is the kind of project that they were highlighting as the bulk of the interventions, right? The coastal interventions for the entire plan. And so thank you for bringing up some of the issues, but yeah, knowing that we may have additional opportunities, but go ahead. What was your last?
Yeah, and I'm sorry, just my last comment. that we also raised as a concern. There was talk about that feasibility study for the living shorelines, but there's also the Manhattan Greenway proposed for this section of the Harlem River, and this really seems to directly conflict with that. Army Corps recognizes it. They acknowledge, yes, we know this project's happening and we're going to coordinate, but it's not, that coordination's not referenced. There's not really a discussion in the report of how it's all going to come together. So again, there's a lot of planning happening for this area, and there seems to be kind of a lack of communication or cohesiveness into what the future of this area is going to look like. So, major concerns. If anyone has any other questions they'd like to talk to Riverkeeper or myself about on our comments, be happy to
Yeah.
share them, be happy to talk through them.
And Drew and Ammon, I don't know if you can answer this right away, but is it okay if we share the letter as it reads right now, as it was shared to us with swim members, or is it still in development?
No, it should be
Okay.
good to share. Just
Okay.
caveat, it's we still have till Monday, so I might change or
Yes, of
add, but
course.
it's it's
Lots of
in
time.
solid shape.
Thank you so much for, I mean, just taking a quick look at it, and I haven't gotten all the way through yet, but it looks to be the most comprehensive one that we've seen
But
so far. So
I shared
thank
a
you.
copy with you, Leonel.
Yeah, yeah,
So
no, that's what I'm saying. That's what I was showing. I started
Yeah.
going through it, but it looks to be the most comprehensive one so far. So thank you for taking the time and taking the lead on that at a time when, as Karen said, everyone's been struggling to keep up, let alone respond.
My pleasure. It happens
Yeah.
fast and summer's busy, so
Thank
glad
you
we could
both.
help.
Thank you all. Michelle
So
and
I
then
may just
Chino.
add one thing about
sure.
what you said, because you're right. This is one that leads us to whatever else they're gonna do. I said, I spoke to some people today, and they never talked about fixing the highway. This is an old highway. I mean, there are things they could do to fix the highway as opposed to putting these crazy walls up. And I don't know, maybe they think it's not, maybe they have to be closer to the water or something. We don't know, or whatever the thing is, but that's an alternative that I think is critical. Sorry.
Chino.
I just wanted to
Oh,
say,
sorry, Michelle, go ahead.
it's okay. Drew, don't go too far. I have questions for you. Number one, I'm not understanding, and maybe this is something we can go into offline, but I think maybe if others have been reading it and they're not environmental lawyers, they might be confused too. I don't understand how the Army Corps can say there are no roads in this area, there is no transit in this area, and then particularly in the Harlem one, they're actually talking about, do we put it on the landward or the seaward side of the road? And then they talk about the subway crossing underneath, but yet above, when they were talking about it in the section that requires them to talk about, what impact to roads and things they'll have, they, in all of those instances, they said that, well, I don't know, there was some sort of legalese that I clearly didn't understand. What is their justification? Is this a big point to bring up, or is this a minutia that I should let go because I just didn't understand the legal foundation behind it? Please and thank you.
Yeah, no problem. I think there might be some confusion in the language that they're reading. I don't think they're trying to say there's no roads. It's really all about impacts, and they're just evaluating that the construction of the wall might have, I think they've said that they've accounted for the temporary impacts to traffic during construction. Um, but the wall itself, once it goes up, will not impact the existing infrastructure. There will be no additional changes to the additional to the subway, to the streets, any of that, and there will be no impacts from the wall. Does that make sense? Does that make sense?
Okay, I found the language, and what it said in the report was, during review, it was determined that no roads or highways were present within the study area.
Sure, highways were present in the study area.
And then they went on to say, as this report is an interim response to the comprehensive plan, the same resources were reviewed for applicability to the actionable elements interim response sites and determined to not apply to this specific actionable element site. Therefore, an effects analysis is not applicable.
Is it perhaps federal highways? I don't know. Maybe there's
No,
a
Michelle,
specific.
can you, what's
yeah.
that page number?
It's a state highway. It's not a federal highway.
It's
That's what I'm saying. Yeah, it's not a
it-
state. It's not a
it-
federal highway. Therefore,
the documents page 58, but if you look at it in the PDF, it's page 74. It's
I'll look.
it's 3.3.4, section 3.3.4, built environment.
I mean, they may have kind of rushed through the report. Not to say that they did.
Oh, there are
They
there are all
absolutely might
sorts of
have.
typos.
Yeah,
Okay.
I
Right.
think it might just be a typo. I really think they meant to say about the impacts, which is
Yeah.
why they weren't part of the future assessment.
Oh.
But let me take another
Yeah.
look at that to make sure that I didn't misread or
Okay.
not see something. So I'll get back to you.
Because all those sections are the copy and pasted the same words, basically. So, okay, awesome. Thank you, environmental lawyer. You're amazing.
Yeah, well, let me get a good answer before
Are
we
they
say
saying
that.
there's no impact because they're building into the water?
No, there's no impact to like this won't cause additional traffic, this won't
The
impact
project
traffic
itself
flow.
won't impact.
Right,
Yeah.
because they're building the wall in the water, right? Not
Well, there's the
on top of
landward.
there is the landward, right? But they're building it adjacent to the land. I don't know.
Yeah, so the
You let
seaward
us
one would
know what
be
they mean.
Yeah, let
Well,
me
but
take
then
another
when they
look and
start
then I'll
talking, when they start talking about the oh, and this one, when they're talking about the BD tunnel, MTA tunnel line, that's on page 69 of the physical report, but page 58 or page 85, sorry, dyslexia. Page 85 of the PDF. It says for the existing MTA tunnel located within the actionable element site, but they keep saying that there aren't things in the actionable element site. And so I'm really confused.
Yeah, I think it's about like impacts and not impacting traffic flow and that they're not proposing any additional work in those areas. But again,
Sure.
let me go back through and just I'll confirm that that's what I think they're saying. And it might be worth pointing out like you guys need to clear your language up.
Yeah. Thanks.
Thank you all. So Shino, do you have anything to add, or
Yeah, I
should we
just
move on
wanted
to?
to ask Michelle Langa to weigh in on the
Yes,
other
exactly.
site.
That's what I was
before
just
we
pulling
run out of
up.
time. Yeah.
Yeah, we'll do Michelle, and then maybe if anybody has any thoughts on the Staten Island project after that. Michelle, are you there? Michelle, there you are. Hold on.
You're trying to unmute me, not her.
Yeah, she disappeared, I think.
Sorry, I wasn't sure which Michelle you meant.
Yes.
Yeah, so this one, East Riser Ditch has been kind of a long-standing issue for flooding in our area. I don't know if any of you are familiar with the Meadowlands RBD project that was going on several years ago. There were some repairs to this as well under that. And I think they make mention of that, there being, I think the pumping. It's essentially, from what I understand, previous to my time here, was sort of like a man-made ditch to help alleviate some flooding way back when. So we're not necessarily terribly concerned about the project itself, more concerned with the long-term maintenance and upkeep of it. That tends to fall on the local municipalities, and the ones along this area have not had the best track record of maintenance. And there is no funding available in any of these projects to provide for that long term. So that's
Okay.
sort of our primary concern with the project.
Right. That's fair. And Yeah, this one seems to be one of the most straightforward ones, right? That's more based on a previous project proposal. Do you have any
Yeah.
thoughts though on, just so we switch over to the last actionable element on the from your experience and expertise on the Oakwood Beach one, which again is outboard from an existing wastewater treatment facility in the South Shore of Staten Island.
Yeah. I haven't dug into this one as deeply, sorry.
No,
I've been
it's okay.
been trying to focus
It's
on the
fair.
closest one first, but yeah, I mean my take just generally and you know, just based on sort of being a part of the process with several other groups is that this is kind of we have to show something for all this money that we've been given to do it kind of thing. And they picked 3 things that they thought would possibly meet with the least amount of resistance. I don't believe that that's true for the Bronx River project. I think that one is probably, or sorry, the Harlem River, the least sensible and has some real flaws to it. So, yeah, I have my
No
suspicions
worries.
about
It's all
all of
good.
this.
Perhaps it seems like Riverkeeper has had the most time to review the documents, so I don't know if anybody wants to jump in there or if anyone else wants to jump in about this project, because you're right, Michelle, it does seem like this one is the one that's really focusing on nature-based solutions and showing what could be done. At least in this location, that really does potentially positively impact water quality as well, right?
Yeah, and I'm all for incorporating nature-based where it makes the most sense. So,
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Anyone has any additional thoughts on or any thoughts on this from the review?
No, we left it out of our comment letter, just because when it's out of our jurisdiction, and also it just seemed like a very straightforward project. I mean, they're trying to get something done. These two, the Jersey project and the Staten Island project, are ready to go. So, we do support the Army Corps moving forward with something. This is obviously not going to be the main solution, but seems like if they have the money and they can move this project forward, this seemed like a good nature-based one to just take.
Okay. So thank you. Any other general comments, maybe Drew, that you can point to as I shift over to some of those priorities again? And what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to, and I know, Holly, how much you've been able to encapsulate. So go ahead, Karen.
I just have one question about the cost sharing. Who's cost sharing these things? So they mentioned cost sharing, but so is the DEP cost sharing that one in Staten Island? Is the town and is the DEP in New Jersey paying for the one in New Jersey? And like exactly how much are they sharing?
I knew this from the meetings because the coalition has been looking at me. Let me look at my notes. I believe
Okay.
it's a certain percentage cost share with the responsible local agents or local partner.
Right.
I'll check on that. I hope I can get that answer right away.
I think
But
on the project website, DEC and New Jersey DEP, and I believe also New York City DEP are listed as the non-federal partners.
yeah, I believe there's a specific percentage, but let me check on that if that's actually true or if it's just what was generally discussed. Maybe while I do that, if people want to discuss these, and by the way, this is our document to write on, and I'm gonna share it. Actually, let's share it for editing for now, and then I'll move it to well, I'll share it for comments, so you all can add comments if you want.
Right.
And if you all can just deliberate on some of these general goals, and of course, we might want to add a couple related to water quality specifically. I know we only have a little bit of time left, but at least to get us a head start on trying to compose this letter, we will be pulling from, hopefully, if it's okay with Riverkeeper, from Riverkeeper's letter, as well as from this document and some of our own notes. But let me try and find that and send you all the link in the chat so you can start collaborating. And this is the 3rd tab, by the way, on the document. And I know we only have a little bit of time left, so I don't know if anybody has a different idea of how to do this right now. Again, this is all, as has been brought up many times today and before, very quick turnaround. and we're trying to do the best we can, even though a lot of people are out sick, so it's been a bit of a challenge, but we're trying to do what we can. So I'll mute myself, and feel free to unmute and talk over these and make comments on it. I put the link on the chat, and you should be able to access to make comments.
Okay.
And if someone wants to help facilitate that, please go ahead from swimming.
When is your deadline? What we put this stuff in? Oh, there it goes. So we have to have everything in by Friday, probably.
Yeah.
Is it 11:59 p.m.? I think,
If
right?
someone can check, I think it is, yeah.
I'll check.
I'm trying to navigate the screen sharing and so bear with me. But I don't know if anybody has any, maybe we can start if anybody has any issue with any of these general goals. Right? And then maybe I can scroll down after you all decide that that's okay.
Yeah, I like them all. They haven't definitely engaged the communities. It's like,
I think one of the things SWIM has advocated for in the past is consider the impact on water quality, which they have not done.
Yeah, and I think
Right.
that might be elaborated further down below, but I think we should make it obviously top of mind on
Yeah.
project, not just for the projects that are actively seeking to improve water quality, right? Or maintain it in light of climate change, but also those that aren't explicitly about that. Somebody was speaking?
No, I just said agree.
Maybe a question is there anything that you think should be less prioritized for Swim Coalition as a water quality focused group out of these?
And these are, just to clarify, these are not the same points that the Riverkeeper letter makes.
Not exactly, right? They're not from the Riverkeeper letter. They're
Right.
from the broader coalition.
Right. So these are higher level than the Riverkeeper comments.
Yeah, and I was going to copy the Riverkeeper comments, but I didn't have time to summarize them and put them in here because it is a wonderful 13-page letter.
You let the lawyer write it up and it's not brief.
I'm telling you,
But
it's briefer than what I would do.
I will say that as you read through the letter, you will find those points mentioned in each one. Starting with the letter starts with the need for a comprehensive plan, and I think my last point's actually focused on meaningful public engagement, and then those other points are referenced within the document. So
And Drew, or do you all or anyone else in the call, from Karen's comment, do you all remember what that cost share was? Again, I'm still looking for that. It may not be the most central thing, so I might have
no, it's
have to
okay.
get
We'll
back to
get
you,
it.
Karen.
We'll get it. I mean, like, yeah, I agree. I think we should put it should be increase protect water quality. I mean, it should be there someplace. Protect and improve water quality, or yeah.
And maybe we'll find ways to integrate that further. There are comments specifically on project planning, or again, this is more elaborating from the previous overall goals. One specific one that was, as I mentioned earlier, a component, a built-in design feature of the overall plan a few years ago were induced flooding sacrifice zones. And
Yeah,
And
right.
apparently that's against the mandate of Army Corps of Engineer and their projects, right? So I think that's been something that's been really strongly advocated for, and we need to keep reiterating it. And I think it's obviously a potential issue with the Harlem River piece. And as these components get broken up, you know, what do they call induced flooding for one project versus the overall plan, right?
Just ridiculous, you know?
Yeah. And of course, that would also have potential water quality impacts when we're talking about where is the water coming from, going to any kind of fugitive chemicals when it floods, et cetera, right? Any questions or comments on what you see right now in terms of project planning? And this might make it smaller in your screens, just so I can get to these project plan bullets. And again, we may de-emphasize some of these in our writing of the letter, so it's more connected to what swim is about, and just refer to some of these goals, but I just want to make sure that everyone is okay with these general points listed here. And WRDA is the Water Resources Defense Act, and that section 80106 has been what the leverage that our advocacy organizations have used to push back on some of these coastal protection, coastal flooding only solutions to really integrate other types of flooding. Sorry, Water Resources Development Act. Thank you, Holly.
I wish it were defense. They're not defending water resources
I
here
think
at
Army
all.
Corps, so I thought defense. I'm
You were
sorry.
just
Yes,
doing
Development Act.
wishful thinking. Yeah. So, I don't want to throw anybody under the bus, but now we are somewhat of a more intimate group. I have to say, we were
This is still
supposed
being
to have.
recorded, by the way, Shino. Do you want me to stop recording?
Oh, that's true. Well, I'll say
It's still a public meeting.
diplomatically. Yes, we planned to have a meeting just on this topic last week, right? And we couldn't make it work, and it was beyond our control. That's all I want to say, because it might feel like we're doing this at the very last minute, and we actually weren't. We were supposed to be having a meeting dedicated to this topic about a week ago.
But I do think a lot of people are, there was a family emergency from one of our partners, and I do think a lot of people are struggling to even wrap their minds around this. And honestly, these goals were just developed at the end of last week, right? Or redeveloped or rehashed. So, again, congratulations to Riverkeeper for being able to get their comments done so quickly in light of all this. But yeah, it's been challenging to even come together, to Shino's point, and really deliberate on this. And we apologize for not being able to do this last week, collectively.
Well, and I
Apologize.
think something can be said for the fact that despite their pleas for public engagement and invite us to your meetings and we want to meet with you, I tried every manner of way to contact them.
The Army Corps.
Contacted them multiple times through each method and received a very snarky response.
So definitely, it's true.
And they, even though I know they weren't busy when we had the meeting planned, they said no one would be able to attend.
Yeah, they did prioritize the in-person meetings at the different actionable element locations that coincided with the day that we were planning to have our meeting. But yeah,
but
we
I
did ask
invited them to
multiple
speak
times
for only a half an hour.
Correct,
and
correct.
that was still
right.
too much.
And on the project website, it says interested in hosting the New York, New
Exactly.
Jersey HAT study team at your group's meeting, and our answer was yes. So
I think highlighting that that
Yeah, I think that comes up
meaningful engagement.
exactly.
Something
yeah,
that I've brought up many times at all of their general meetings is that I've been to is, something as simple as making their content and their events registration accessible, so that people know that they've registered for it. People have access to the links, and it's not buried in the website. It's something that seems to be outside of their capacity as a federal agency. I don't know how to say it more.
So we don't know if it's them or if it's,
Correct. Correct. It could be
or
anybody.
if it's the leadership. So we
Fair
need
enough.
to be
Fair enough.
mindful of that,
That's true.
But I
But I
would
think it's
say-
been a perennial problem regardless of
Right.
which administration, right?
Right. I would say that I don't know how they could do these projects and pick them out if they don't know what the water budget is. And I don't know why.
Right.
And they couldn't do the water budget because they can't include everything.
Right. And I think one of the pieces here, just in terms of items that we might develop further, and maybe we can, I don't know, I can't remember if Riverkeeper has any comments on this, is really impacts on water infrastructure. And I know, again, DEC, DEP are part of, DPs are a part of this, but of this conversation as local partners, but it seems to be secondary after the development of the project because it's not in the wheelhouse, in the scope of work for the Army Corps, right? So
Right.
while the Oakwood Beach project does seem to complement and protect even and support the functions of the wastewater treatment plant there, upon first glance at least, that's an exception to the rule, it seems, and you know, it's something for us to consider here because if there are going to be these projects all along our waterfront near all of these wastewater treatment facilities, then those impacts need to be considered, as well as to interceptors and any other kind of infrastructure that might be impacted, right?
Hey, I wanted to highlight good points. I wanted to highlight some of the things that Joel has been putting into the chat and wondering if we need to make just even include something in those goals about human health. Just, I don't know. Is it in there already?
Public health
Yeah.
emergencies.
If it's not
Okay.
explicitly in number 3, it could very easily go into number 3.
That's kind of where, yeah.
Because that's prioritizing people over property. And so
Yes.
that's
Yeah.
also
Protect at-risk frontline communities and their, and you know, human health or something like that, and their health, something like that. Because I think he's bringing up some great points about water as a disease vector.
Yeah.
As well as a great recreation location.
Totally fair. And thank you, Joel. Sorry, I haven't been able to keep up with the
Thanks.
chat. Thank you, Holly, for bringing it up. Thank
Yeah,
you,
no
Joel, for
problem.
bringing it
No
up.
problem. I was seeing all these great points and I thought we should make sure we get something.
And again, if you all want
couple-
to make comments on here and suggestions on this tab, this third tab on the document, we do have some other notes and so on, but this is what we're going to start building the letter from. So please do that. Michelle and I need to kind of do a quick conversation and see how we can get this to move forward and if there's going to be any partnership with other coalitions on this. But please do feel free to add any resources, any comments directly on here through comments and suggestions. And we'll get something
I have
turned
one
back
more
around
question.
by Monday.
I have one more question.
Go ahead, Karen.
They respond to our comments from 2 years ago?
The comments from 2 years ago?
no,
did they-
that's the whole thing, Karen. They ran out of funding, so they never got through all of our comments.
Right. So
So
that's
those
important.
comments,
Yeah.
I'm just sort of,
but I think that this makes the whole thing bogus.
well,
that's they're splitting off actionable elements. So those actionable elements need to be treated as independent and individual projects that are being submitted for public comment, right?
but
But we
except,
do need to come back and talk about the, you know, in our comment letter, talk about the need to address the previous comments. And it does get brought up here in various places.
But our comments would have been in there and they didn't. And so I was going to go look for it, but I don't even know where to look, you know?
no, that's correct. That's why I just put in the chat, Lionel, you probably can't see it because you're screen sharing and everything. I said, for me, the biggest issue I see is that they didn't have enough funding to get through all of our comments. So they're putting these actionable elements forward to align with the tentatively selected plan when we had fundamental issues with how they chose that alternative in the first place. And they're talking about how all these actionable elements tie into the, you know, the storm risk management projects in the ultimately the alternative that they selected. And so it's sort of like, well, if we didn't like the plan that you chose in the first place, how are we necessarily going to like some of these actionable elements? I'm looking at you, flood walls on the Harlem River.
Right.
You know,
And obviously they avoided the really controversial ones, which were the tidal
big
gates
ones.
at
Right,
the
right,
tributaries and at the bays, right? But I do think that this is their intended plan, right? This three-pronged study, and as you, Karen, and Michelle mentioned, Michelle Luque mentioned, you know, that they have been explicit about the fact that they do not have funding to continue the overall study, and that this is something that they are going to keep applying for. I mean, let's be honest, do we think under the current federal administration they're going to move forward with the overall plan? Are they going to move forward with WRDA funding? Who knows? But I do think for the sake of continuing the work and being responsive to our comments, they need to not just have conversations with what has been a wonderful working group trying to nudge them in the right direction, but to actually put these comments, these responses in writing, right? And I think that that's critically important, and we will put that front and
Okay.
center in our comment letter.
Okay.
If everybody at SWIM agrees, I think that that's something we
Okay.
should do. But yeah, I'm just scrolling really quickly. By the way, time check, it's 6:03. If people
Right.
want to stay for another few minutes to just, but again, the next step, if people can take a little bit of time tonight and tomorrow to start putting in their comments and suggestions and any resources you might want us to consider, please
Right.
do. And we'll try and get something turned around with at least a few hours to review. Hopefully we can get something done on Sunday for people to take a quick look at and make final comments, but it might be more overarching than we would like to do, but that's
Right.
just the nature of this timeline. And I don't know, Holly, Shino, Michelle, anybody else from SWIM, if you want to add anything right now, or if anyone else has anything that you want
No, I
us to
think
consider.
I think we should go. And we should just read it,
Sounds
slowly.
fair.
I think
And by the way,
points.
those points are all from
Right.
the coalition. We have not fully integrated the Riverkeeper letter yet, but I will link it at the top so that we have something to refer to
Right.
as you all are looking at. Or we will
Okay.
look at it. All right. Any
And
final
we
I'll
will be
just stop
writing a
sharing.
letter, so I will say that we're in favor of whatever you write and whatever Riverkeeper writes.
Yeah, and absolutely, we will do that for the local organizations, especially the member orgs.
Right.
Great.
Any other final comments on this process? And again, sorry that apologies that this is by the seat of our pants, but this is the nature of what we've been dealt and how we've been able to manage this so far. And again, thank you, Riverkeeper, for getting ahead and helping us
Thank
out
you,
on this.
Riverkeeper.
Right.
Okay.
All right.
Well,
Bye,
thank you
guys.
all. We're a small group now, so thank you all, and we'll see you
Everybody.
soon.
Thank you,
And we'll hear from you.
everyone.
Thanks,
Bye-bye.
guys. Bye.
Bye.